Well, Donald Trump, Peter Baker, is expressing support for holding televised military tribunals against former Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney. The former president reposted this image on his Truth Social account on Sunday. It reads, quote, "Liz Cheney is guilty of treason. Read Truth if you want televised military tribunals." In response, Cheney wrote on X, quote, This is the type of thing that demonstrates yet again that you are not a stable adult and you are not fit for office. Of course, we've had that conversation, Peter Baker, about all those who are calling for Joe Biden to step down, worried about his fitness, and just letting all of this go by. It's not that let it go by, but they don't make it like a call for him to step down and a call for Americans to look at his fitness. We'll put that aside for a second. And I ask you, should Donald Trump be taken seriously about his threats? Can we look at his first or second campaign and the promises he made and then the things that he followed through on and draw to that as knowing that his pattern would be the answer is yes?
Yeah, I think we should take Donald Trump seriously. I think what we learned in his first term was that he obviously likes to say a lot of things that are provocative that he may not follow up on. But then on some of the things he says that are provocative, he does follow up on. And some of the things he says that were provocative that he didn't follow up on were only because he was surrounded at the time by more establishment Republicans or figures, military officers and so forth, who discouraged him, talked him out of it, threw sand in the gears, whatever, made sure it didn't happen. These are not people who will be there in a second term. We know that. So when he says he's for termination of the Constitution in order to return to power, when he says his new term in office would be about retribution, when he says that Liz Cheney should be put on a military trial, I think you have to assume that he's serious about that and he won't have people around him who will try to stop him. And now the question is, of course, about accountability. One thing that this ruling does is it reinforces the fact that we have not figured out the proper way, an effective way, to hold a chief executive accountable in this country. We've now learned that impeachment doesn't work. Right? As long as the president's party has at least 1/3 of the members of the Senate, no president is ever going to be convicted in an impeachment trial. That's very clear. Certainly, Donald Trump is not going to be afraid of impeachment if he's in office again. And so that's not really a form of accountability anymore. The courts obviously have failed in 4 years since the last election to tell us whether or not his attempt to overturn an election was illegal or not. It's taken 4 years and we don't have an answer to that. So I think we're at a point right now where the system is being rewritten in front of our eyes, and Donald Trump plans to push the boundaries as far as he can.
So, Jen, let's connect what we saw at the top of the hour coming in. Speaker Mike Johnson suggesting, oh, don't be so alarmist. It's outrageous to suggest that Donald Trump would do anything criminal to push the boundaries. As if
like an insurrection.
As
right.
if we haven't been watching the last 5-6 years of this show, or 10 years almost now. And what we saw there, that reposting of the call for military tribunals.
Like, I don't even know what that is, but he'll figure it out.
For treason against Liz Cheney. The idea that he wouldn't and will not push this as far as he possibly can, that's actually what's outrageous.
Right. I mean, he will find a Secretary of Defense that will come up with some justification for a military tribunal that somehow Liz Cheney is subjected to and go forward with it. I mean, Joyce, I'm going to ask for your opinion, which I know you like to, lawyers like to stay in facts, but there are some important details and, kind of niceties even about the opinion yesterday that suggests that the court thinks there's some ways that he should be reined in. But, as more of a layperson, that this court continues to disappoint us when it comes to upholding norms and standards. And yesterday just felt to me, I was like, they will never tell him no. They will never, we can never rely on this court to hold him accountable in any way. There just aren't any guardrails. 18 hours after or whatever, how are you looking at this court and what we need to brace for with them guarding a Trump presidency?
So look, as someone who studies and teaches about democratic institutions, I just don't have any good news for you in that regard. This is a deeply disappointing opinion from the court. And there are a lot of moving parts in that. It's the absence of clear standards for making these decisions about what is and what is not immune conduct. It's this absolutely crazy notion. You know, one part of this opinion we haven't talked about, and this is a part that Justice Barrett actually does not join, so this is 5-4, but this is the part of the opinion that says prosecutors can't even use evidence of official acts to prove motive or intent. They have to pretend that that official conduct never happened. So you can only imagine how that plays out across the entirety of these prosecutions. I will tell you that with my prosecutor hat on, this looks a little bit different. Maybe not any more positive, but prosecutors are used to having courts tell them that they can't use some of their evidence and that they're going to dismiss some of their charges. And good prosecutors get back up and evolve their cases and move forward. I think that's the hope here, is that Jack Smith and his team will find a path forward. But again, no good news, because what the Supreme Court does is they have created so much delay in the process that this case will not be tried before the next election. Voters will go to the polls not knowing what a jury of Donald Trump's peers might have concluded had they had the opportunity to hear the evidence in this case.
Hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me, Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, Lawrence O'Donnell, Steve Kornacki, Joy Reid, and many more September 7th in Brooklyn, MSNBC Live Democracy 2024. Click on the link for ticket information. We will see you there.